All right, this is your lecture on other punctuation. We're going to start with colons. So colons are hard to use well. Many writers can make it through their entire careers without ever truly needing a colon. Yet once you know how to use them, you'll find that they fit naturally into your writing. Use only one space after a colon unless you're using a typewriter. Colons are frequently used in the salutations of form letters. You've seen these when they say like, "Dear Sir," "To whom it concerns." Colons can introduce a series, but be careful. There's a common wrong way to do it. The right way is when what comes before the colon is an independent clause. The wrong way is when what comes before the colon is a dependent clause. For example, wrong, the store had apples, bananas, and oranges. The store had 3 kinds of fruit: apples, bananas, and oranges. That's the right way. All right, colons are also used to connect 2 clauses where the first one explains or is the logical follow-up to the second one. We don't capitalize the first letter after the colon unless the colon introduces a series of sentences and not just an independent clause. The first example, perhaps the wolf will make a comeback, colon. Rangers in Yosemite National Park report a huge uptick in sightings. The second example, their magic tricks were amazing, colon. First they made each other float. Then they recited the phone numbers of everyone in the front row. Finally, they not only sawed a lady in half, but they made her legs walk off the stage by themselves. All right, next is going to be dashes. There are 2 kinds of dashes, N dashes and M dashes. Especially in formal writing, their functions are kept distinct. So the first dashes we're going to look at is the N dash. An N dash is the width of the lowercase letter N. It's located on your keyboard right above the P. Okay. It is used in ranges of numbers or dates. Usually there is no space on either side of an N dash. Like pages 45 through 90, March 1st through the 21st, 1904 to 1924. It can also be used to show an open-ended date range where the final date is not yet known. You'll see these every once in a while, and when speaking about authors, or on tombstones occasionally where a couple will have their tombstone prepared but has not yet passed away. Like Terrell Owens, 1973, and then there's the dash, and then there's no end date. All right. Now, M dashes. An M dash is the width of an uppercase letter M. Okay, let me show you something about making an M dash. I'm going to show you how to make this real quick on here. You have to do your sentence, so we'll just write sentence. You hit the dash sign above that P. You put a space, and then you have to write another word like we, and hit the space bar. That's how you make that dash long, okay? Otherwise, you're just going to have another N dash, all right? So, it is used to set off portions of text that may be of secondary interest or even peripheral. It often connects 2 independent clauses with a related thought in the same way parentheses or commas might, but the effect is much more striking. The M dash is usually a substantial visual interruption. Different style guides have different rulings on whether to include spaces on either side of an M dash. Now, in most cases, however, you do have a space on either side of that M dash. A single M dash can be used to set off a condition or conclusion for emphasis. Nigel and Tamsin were married. We think they eloped to France, and then they immediately set about starting a family. That was the first one for set off portions of text that may be of secondary interest or even peripheral. A single M dash can be used to set off a condition or a conclusion for emphasis. The first example is we are wearing tuxedos to the birthday party, and that's not up for debate. The second example, the fire marshal wants to condemn the building, but he has to go to court to do it. M dashes can also be used to set off lists in an independent clause, sometimes with a conjunction as part of the list and sometimes without. An example is the robust rustic menu, quail, rabbit, beets, morels, persimmons, Lord, I can't say that word tonight. Cider was perfect after a long hunt. M dashes can also be used to show incomplete dialogue. We're getting the, she stammered, I think we're ready to, now what? Oops, I forgot to roll it for you guys. Sorry about that. All right, so I'm going to give you an example of a poem. This is an Emily Dickinson's, and she is famous for using dashes in her poems. So after great pain, a former feeling comes. The nerves sit ceremonious like tomes. The stiff heart questions, was it he that bore, and yesterday or centuries before? The feet mechanical go round a wooden way of ground, or air, or aught, regardless grown, a quartz contentment like a stone. This is the hour of lead, remembered if outlived. As freezing persons recollect the snow, first chill, then stupor, then the letting go. You notice how there were long pauses where those dashes were. So that would be the way the poem is read. All right, so ellipsis points is the next thing we're going to look at. An ellipsis can be used to indicate a pause or an unfinished thought. Can this really be true? I am not sure. The main uses of ellipsis, though, is to indicate that words have been deleted from a direct quote. You do not need to use an ellipsis if it is obvious you are using a partial quote, however. William Price Fox told the interviewer that he didn't think very much before writing. An ellipsis can be 3 dots or 4 dots, depending on where it's placed in a sentence. If the omission occurs at the beginning of a quotation or within a quotation, you would use 3 dots. William Price Fox told the interviewer that he didn't like to think before writing. Okay, so in that particular instance, they took out the very much part of the first quote, right? Didn't think very much before writing, so they took out very much. So that's the part that's missing. Note that there's space on both sides of those 3 dots. So to make an ellipsis, let me show you right here. To make an ellipsis, you write your word, So we'll say thanks. Make that space. You hit the period. You hit the space bar again. Hit a period. Hit the space bar again. Hit the period. Hit the space bar. And then write another word. And that is how you make ellipsis marks. Okay? When the omission occurs at the end of a quotation, though, you use 4 dots. The extra dot is the period at the end of the sentence. Okay? William Price told the interviewer that he didn't like to think. And that's when you have the 4. And I've actually dropped one, so let me add my other dot. There we go. And your word is going to tell you that is wrong no matter what you do, and you're going to click on it and it's going to try and squish it together. Just hit ignore once because it's correct that way. All right, now you want to watch out. Make sure that you don't change the meaning of a sentence when you omit words. For example, imagine you are going to use the following quote from the mayor. The budget committee is doing all it can to avoid having to raise taxes again for at least 2 years. Now, this is incorrect to quote this way. The mayor's last point about having to raise taxes again seemed to draw the most attention from the crowd. Now, just mentioning having to raise taxes again, out of all of that was said, is inflammatory, isn't it? Because it doesn't mention the fact that for at least 2 years, does it? No. You change the complete meaning of that quote when you pull it out like that. And I'm just going to tell you now, those are things that I look for. If you give me a piece of information like that, I might go looking for it. All right? All right, the next thing we're going to look at is parentheses and brackets. In formal linguistics terminology, the act of setting off text with any kind of punctuation, commas, em-dashes, brackets, and so on, is called parenthesis. Here, though, we are referring to the punctuation known as parentheses, the plural form of parenthesis. Parentheses add information that is not as important as the text surrounding it and is set off accordingly. If it were any less important, it might become a footnote. If it were any more important, it might be set off with em-dashes or commas. There's several examples here. Barrett, Minnesota, population 410, is the seat of Grant County. Naoma Barrett, née Hopkins, was born in 1910. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, otherwise known as NASA, wants to land people on Mars. LOL, an acronym for Laugh Out Loud, has spawned the word, I believe it's pronounced lulz, which are what you feel when you do something pointless for fun. My cats, Taffy and King Arthur, have very different personalities. All of that was added information, right? Parentheses can also be used to enclose meta-commentary or thoughts on what was just written. I fear the end of the manuscript, for without its misery I shall have nothing to fight against. Carpenters built me a porch, which I could have done myself, if I weren't busy. Square brackets are used to add something not originally in a quote. We can also use square brackets to restate and clarify. If, for example, you have a quote that is not altogether clear, Perhaps because the referent is in part of the text you will not be including, you can use brackets to replace the pronoun with the referent. You can also add words that you know will help the reader understand without changing the overall effect of the original writer's words. So the original. The Nobel Prize was awarded in recognition of her services in the advancement of chemistry by the discovery of the elements radium and polonium. So edited. The Nobel Prize was awarded in recognition of Curie's services in the advancement of chemistry by the discovery of the elements radium and polonium. The next one, original. I told him I wouldn't do the movie. No way. So edited. I told Spielberg I wouldn't do the movie. No way. Original. Goldfish often develop bacterial infections. Edited. Goldfish kept in unclean tanks often develop bacterial infections. If parentheses or brackets appear at the end of a sentence, terminating punctuation, which is a period, question mark, or exclamation mark, goes outside of them. Okay? Just a little FYI there for you to know. You do need to watch out. Make sure that you don't change the meaning of a sentence when you, hold on. Parentheses, brackets, and quotation marks always come in pairs. It's incorrect not to have them in pairs. You don't have the beginning of a quotation of a parentheses and then end with a bracket. Okay? Some people will do that. You don't do that. Something else you want to be aware of, any words that can be put into parentheses can also be put inside a pair of dashes. Parentheses suggest a quiet aside. They're often used for additional information that is not that important. Dashes are more dramatic, calling attention to the material. However, you do not want to ever overdo it with dashes. That can make things very awkward for your paper, especially with an essay. All right, so keep that kind of thing in mind. All right. This is the end of your lecture on other punctuation. See you later.